Hey guys, it's Magdalene. Welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial is this black blazer with a grown on collar as worn by Kim Kardashian. Here, this was a requested tutorial and I made the pattern a few weeks ago, and I also uploaded how to sew the jetted pocket as a separate tutorial. So I'm not going to do too much talking, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the tutorial. So here I've got all my pieces cut out. I've ironed on some interfacing on the wrong side of all of these pieces, and I've pinned all the seams. So the first thing I did was to sew all the seams and then iron the seam allowance flat, as I've done here. And as you can see, I've already sewn in my pockets, and when you sew the seams, you want to pin your pockets out of the way and not sew them down. I've just uploaded a separate tutorial for sewing double jet pockets on my channel, and there should be a card pop up on the right hand side now. The next thing to do is sew the collar seam. So I placed the two front lapel pieces right sides facing and sewed the seam, then ironed the seam allowance flat. Here it is sewn and the seam pressed open. Next, I pinned the seam on the inside edge. Make sure you don't pin the outer edge because that's the lapel edge. And when you sew the collar seam that I've just sewn, it will create this squared shape. And this is the two front shoulders and the under collar, which gets sewn onto the back neck. So I've pinned the seam to the centre back neck, matching it to my notch. Then on the wrong side of the front pieces at the two corners, which are my shoulder and necklines, I've marked my seam lines 1 centimetre in from the edge in chalk to mark a cross section. And these are really important steps to sew your collar in properly. Then on the back piece, I've done the same thing at the back shoulder and the back neckline, marking a cross section on the seam lines. The reason I'm marking these corners is because they get sewn together and they have to match. So you can see I've got a cross on both pieces, and I've placed them together right sides facing and placed a pin through both X's, making sure that they match up. And the first one matched up, but you can see here that this one didn't match up. So it's really important to get them matching for when you sew in the collar. So I repinned it so that the two X's matched up on the front and the back pieces. Once you've got the corners pinned, match up your front and back shoulder seams and pin. Then you can take it to the machine. When you lay your fabric on the machine, in my opinion, it's easier if the front piece is on top, and I'll show you why in a second. So I've got my front piece on top here, and I'm starting by sewing my shoulder seam. And when I get to the corner where I've marked the cross section, I stop and put my needle down. I also use the hand wheel to get to the corner because I don't want to go one stitch over that point. Then when the needle is down, lift the foot and I pivot the fabric so that the corner is facing me, and I snip into that corner, cutting only through the front piece, which is on top. So you have to be careful not to catch the back piece, and you're going to snip to about 2 millimeters before the needle. Once you've snipped, it will allow you to open out the piece and sew the rest of the neckline. Then pivot the piece around and continue sewing. When you get to the next corner, do the same thing. So here is the collar attached to the back neckline that I've just sewn, and to make sure my corner is nice and sharp when I turn it over, I snipped in a little more to get closer to my stitch line. Next we're going to go onto the lining, and I've sewn all the pieces together as I did on the front, and I've also sewn in my pleat for a few inches at the top and the bottom at the centre back. Then I attached my back facing to the lining along the outer edge of the facing, so I matched my notch on the facing to the centre back on my lining, which is the pleat seam. Placed the pin and then sewed them both together. And here is what it looks like. Then I sewed the front neck seam as I did with the garment pieces and pinned it to the back neck, then marked the cross sections on the corners and attached the front and back neck pieces as I did on the garment. And when it's sewn together, it looks like this, and on the lining I've already sewn the sleeves that you can see here, and I'm going to show you how to sew them in on the garment pieces next. So I've got my garment jacket here and the sleeve, which I've sewn the seam and ironed the seam allowance flat. Then between the front and back pitch points, I've sewn a running stitch with the stitch length on number 4, so the largest stitch, then pulled one of the threads to gather the sleeve head and spread the gathers evenly across the sleeve head, which is eased into the armhole. I've also got my sleeve now turned through to the right side and my garment is inside out. Then find the sleeve head notch on the sleeve and match it to the shoulder seam from the inside of the jacket as I am here, and do the same with the front and back pitches and the underarm seam and pin them together. Then using the stitch length number 4, I sew the sleeve in and I keep the sleeve at the bottom flat onto the machine so that the teeth at the bottom of the machine can help to ease in the sleeve head. Once I'm happy with the fit of the sleeve, I go back over that same stitch line using a regular stitch 2.5. Next, I attached shoulder pads and sleeve head wadding to the armhole. I folded my shoulder pad in half, making the back longer by 1 centimeter and marked and notched, which I placed on my shoulder seam on the inside of the jacket and pinned the shoulder pad down. Then placed the sleeve head wadding to the other side of the seam and pinned it down. Then sew the shoulder pad and the wadding to the seam allowance of the armhole. The final steps are to lay the garment jacket down inside out but with the opening facing up, and take the lining jacket, which is also inside out, and place it on top so that the opening is facing down. And I've left a small hole in one of the lining sleeves and made sure that I backstitched at either end of the opening to strengthen the seams. The first seam I'm matching up on the garment and the lining are the collar seams, so I matched them right sides facing and pinned. Then, as you can see me doing here, you need to move your lining sleeves out of the way and pin the perimeter of the jacket together, right sides facing, making sure that you match all of your notches and the seams at the hem. Then at this stage, once I've pinned the perimeter of the jacket, I'm going to pin the cuffs, and you have to be really careful not to twist your sleeves. So I've laid my garment sleeves facing out and making sure that my garment and lining sleeves are not twisted. I bring them together and they need to be pinned right sides facing. So to make that easier to pin the cuffs, I fold the garment sleeve an inch or 2 backwards, and I do the same with the lining and place them together right sides facing, matching the seam, and pin around the cuff. Once you've pinned the cuffs, double check again that your sleeves haven't twisted, because you don't want to sew your jacket together, turn it through and your sleeves have twisted. They should look like this, and they should loop over the jacket. Then first sew around the perimeter of the jacket and then sew the cuffs. So here I've sewn around the jacket and I've sewn the cuffs, and I've checked once again that the sleeve seams are lined up and not twisted. I've also snipped into the corner at the step on the hem of my jacket and also around the lapel, which will help the seams to lay flat once the jacket is turned through. Then find the hole in the sleeve and pull the whole jacket through carefully. I usually grab the shoulder pads first because they are the bulkiest piece. Here it is turned through, and I'll give it a nice iron to make it nice and crisp, then go back into the sleeve and close the hole on the right side of the jacket, and it's done. And I'm not adding any buttons, but if you want to, then because we added a button stand when we drafted the pattern, you can add buttonholes and sew on buttons. So that was the tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It is quite an advanced tutorial, but don't be put off. If you are a beginner sewer, you can definitely make yourself a blazer, and a grown-on collar is definitely the most simple collar to make rather than a standard full single or double-breasted collar. Also, sorry this isn't the best video of the jacket, so keep an eye out for more pictures on my Instagram. So anyway, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Bye!